Have you ever asked yourself how many decisions in your life were truly your own? How many times did you feel in control when in reality you were merely reacting? And what if I told you that what you call kindness or empathy might actually be the very force keeping you in captivity? The one who seeks to dominate others may appear powerful, but the one who has mastered themselves is truly invincible. The wise one, the one who governs their own spirit, is stronger than one who takes a city. This echoes the wisdom found in Proverbs, and it is Carl Jung who warns us with calm precision that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. All of us, at some point, have been hostages to our own emotions. You've cried over someone who never deserved a single tear. Have you ever felt guilty for saying no, even when you knew it was the right thing to do? How many times were you manipulated without even realizing it, just because your compassion outweighed your discernment? We live in an age where chains are no longer made of iron. They're invisible. They're made of guilt, fear, and unspoken expectations. Those who wish to control you today do not raise their voices. They whisper, they weep, they make you feel guilty for choosing your freedom. They don't want you to think. They want you to feel. Because the more you feel, the less you think. And the less you think, the more likely you are to betray yourself. Here, we will explore Jung's ideas, not as a doctrine of cruelty, but as a mirror reflecting human reality. We will descend into the underground of human behavior, where tears become traps and embraces may conceal silent strangulation. And no, this is not about becoming stone. It's about refusing to be a puppet. It's about discovering the precise point between emotion and reason. It's about becoming the master of your own psyche. If you're tired of being drained, manipulated, and consumed by those who turn their wounds into weapons and their lack into strategy, stay with us. We are going to dive into the depths of the unconscious, where Jung whispers, "Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals." You're about to discover that the path to mastery may require not feeling everything, but understanding everything. If you're ready, take a deep breath. Let's begin. Have you ever felt that feeling deeply is both your greatest strength and your greatest downfall? Since childhood, we've been taught that crying is a sign of humanity, that forgiveness is noble, that to feel deeply is to be good. But what if that was a trap? A golden cage where the more you feel, the more you bleed. Society dressed emotion in garments of virtue. But Jung, with his penetrating gaze and surgical insight, reminds us that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Those who feel too much are often the first to be deceived. Why? Because the one who feels hesitates, and the one who hesitates loses. What no one tells you is that emotion, as beautiful as it may be, can also be used as an instrument of domination. Like wine poured by manipulative hands, it intoxicates, warms, and then binds. How many times have you said yes when every part of you wanted to scream no? How many times did you stay, even when your soul was begging to leave, because the other person cried, shook, or begged? The brutal truth is that excess empathy can become submission. It's not that feeling is wrong. It's that feeling without boundaries, without discernment, is dangerous. It's like lighting a candle in the middle of a storm. It may shine for a moment, but it is easily extinguished. And the world is full of storms, full of people who blow in your direction not to warm you, but to snuff out your light. In some silent hour of the night, alone with your thoughts, have you realized that you carry pain that doesn't even belong to you. Inherited guilt, imposed responsibilities, expectations you were never meant to fulfill. You feel for everyone, but no one seems to feel for you. You carry the weight of a world that doesn't even notice your shoulders. That is not kindness. That is emotional servitude. Jung reminds us that reason becomes unproductive when it is not rooted in the totality of the psyche, and those who reject it cannot be swayed by it. You don't awaken the unconscious in others through empathy. You simply feed their defense mechanisms. Uncontrolled emotion is not a virtue, it is exposure, and the one who lives with their heart too open becomes an easy map for those who seek to exploit it. Love without discernment, forgiveness without reflection, compassion without boundaries. It all sounds beautiful in inspirational quotes, but in practice, it destroys. This is not about turning into stone. It's about recognizing that even gold must be protected. You are far too valuable to be so accessible. Your emotional energy is a finite resource, and like all finite things, it must be managed with intention and strategy. This is where true self-knowledge begins, when you realize that you don't need to react to everything you feel. You can feel, and yet remain still. You can understand, and still choose not to accept. You can listen to someone's pain, and still prioritize your own peace. Detachment, not as coldness, but as conscious self-mastery. It's the ability to become the author of your emotional narrative, rather than the character others attempt to write against your will. And perhaps, just perhaps, true freedom begins right here, in the moment you stop trying to rescue everyone and start liberating yourself from yourself. They don't need to raise a hand to wound you. They don't need to shout to dominate you. All they need is for you to feel. The more you feel, the more predictable you become. And if you are predictable, you are controllable. Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology could fully articulate it. For Jung, true power lies in the relationship between the unconscious and the self, not in domination, but in awareness. And awareness reveals this: human beings act from emotion before reason, and those who understand this govern. Today, the throne is no longer found in castles. It resides in relationships, in social media, in the silent games of emotional influence. Emotional blackmail is now mistaken for affection. Victimhood disguises itself as vulnerability. And the manipulator, he doesn't arrive as the villain. He cries before he strikes. We live in an era where tears wield more power than logic, because emotion shortens the path to the heart and derails the mind. You no longer need to be right. It's enough to appear wounded, and the emotional court of public opinion will absolve or condemn you on that alone. Have you noticed how someone suddenly changes when confronted? First, they play the offended, then the misunderstood, then they say, "After all I did for you." That's not remorse. That's control. This is not about who's right. It's about who holds the narrative. And in this invisible theater, emotion becomes the script that intoxicates, confuses, and disarms. You find yourself explaining things you didn't do, apologizing for things you don't even understand, defending truths that should never have been questioned. That is the goal: to take away your clarity so that, lost in the fog, you rely on them. They sow confusion and offer themselves as the compass. Jung once warned that what remains unconscious in you will appear in your life as fate. And here it is, the unresolved wounds, the shadow in disguise, seeking power over you. But there's another kind of danger, not the one who suffers in silence, but the one who pretends to suffer to avoid accountability. These are not victims, they are actors, turning your empathy into a tool of control. This is where the idea of emotional sovereignty emerges. It's not about being indifferent to the world, but about recognizing that to survive it, you cannot hand over the steering wheel of your psyche to those who only want to drive you into ruin. Every time you hesitate out of pity, every time you back down to avoid seeming harsh, every time you silence your truth to avoid conflict, you lose ground, you surrender emotional territory, and those who conquer it rarely return it. You must understand, emotional silence is not the absence of feeling, it is strategy. It's the sword of the inner warrior who, instead of striking, observes, and when necessary, steps back, but never surrenders. Because in the end, this silent war is not won by shouting. It is won with presence, with resolve, with the kind of coldness that doesn't come from a lack of love, but from lucidity, the kind Jung would respect, not because it dominates, but because it is self-governing. Jung never advocated cruelty. He didn't glorify detachment for its own sake, but as a path toward inner clarity. In a world where every emotional gesture is a map of your psyche, silence becomes camouflage, and detachment a subtle form of freedom. When Jung spoke of individuation, he wasn't promoting isolation. He was describing the sacred process of becoming whole, free from the projections and expectations of others. That often misunderstood phrase, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both," was never a celebration of fear. It was a warning against emotional dependency as a foundation for authority. It wasn't about dehumanization. It was a raw dissection of power. And Jung would have likely agreed. The one who governs their inner world, who embraces their shadow, who knows the silence within, cannot be ruled by noise from the outside. When power rests in affection, it dissolves with the fluctuation of feelings. The detachment Carl Jung suggests is not emptiness. It is the ability to govern your impulses before they govern you. It's seeing someone's tears and asking, "Is this genuine pain or a strategic mask?" It's walking among emotions, yet remaining centered within the self. And here lies the most delicate point. Being emotionally strategic does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming fair to yourself. It means not punishing yourself with promises made in the heat of emotion. It's realizing that the yes you say to please others is often a disguised no toward your own truth. Have you noticed how those without boundaries are always more exhausted? How those who feel too much are often caught in the middle of dramas they didn't start? In this sense, detachment is not a withdrawal from empathy, but the maturity to choose when and where to invest your emotional energy. Think about it. Would you let anyone drive your car at full speed through mountain curves while you sleep in the back seat? Of course not. Yet every day, you allow others to steer your emotions, and with them, your decisions. Jung, although misunderstood at times, was a profound observer of the human psyche. He didn't ask us to be indifferent. He asked us to be aware. And awareness requires distance, not cold, inhuman distance, but the distance necessary to perceive the whole. Not just the emotional theater unfolding before you. You don't have to be a stone, but you also don't have to be a sponge. And this brings us to a deep psychological concept, aligned with Jung and Stoic thought: equanimity, the peace of the soul that arises when you stop reacting to what you cannot control. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them." And if you learn to discern between authentic emotion and emotional manipulation, you'll be on the path to true inner sovereignty. Detachment, then, is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of awareness. It's not allowing someone else's tears to dictate your ethics. It's saying no without hatred, yes without guilt, goodbye without drama. Because those who can't let go will always be dragged along. And as Jung might say, those who gain favor from others must not depend on it, for what is given by the collective can be taken away. But when the oppressor is your own emotion, then true self-mastery is born, not in contempt for others, but in unwavering respect for yourself. And that respect, that center, that coldness that does not kill but protects, is the rarest form of freedom. Becoming unshakable doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you learn to feel without drowning. It's like diving into the ocean and knowing how to swim instead of sinking every time an emotional wave rises. In today's world, true weakness isn't in feeling nothing. It's in being ruled by every feeling. Do you remember how many times your peace was shattered by an unanswered message, a calculated silence, a glance that implied guilt? These small moments are actually hooks thrown by those who know that human emotion, especially guilt and the need to be accepted, are the easiest buttons to push. You must understand this. There are people who feed off your imbalance. They thrive on your need to explain, to be understood, to be liked. Every time you justify your absence, your decision, your boundary, you open a door, and when they enter, they don't knock. They invade, rearrange your inner space, and worse, make you feel guilty for wanting to reclaim it. But there's a secret, one that almost no one teaches. You can feel and not respond. You can listen and not absorb. You can witness another's pain and still not sacrifice yourself. That's not coldness. It's wisdom. It's the difference between being a conscious individual and being part of a manipulated crowd. That's the key. You are not what you feel. You are what you choose to do with what you feel. Once you understand that, everything changes. You begin to see the invisible game. Every accusation, every silence, every crisis becomes a piece on the board. And on that board, the king is the one who remains still while everything else trembles. To be emotionally unshakable means this: to remain whole in the middle of the war, to not react impulsively, to respond with clarity, and perhaps more than anything, it means understanding that you no longer need to prove anything. You don't need to justify your no. You don't need to explain your distance. You are not open code. You are sacred territory, and access to that territory must be earned, not demanded. Carl Jung didn't want you to stop feeling. He wanted you to stop being a slave to what you feel. He wanted you to become the master of yourself. And in this digital hysteria, where everyone shouts, where everyone is offended, where everything becomes drama, your calm is a revolution. Your calculated indifference is a shield. Your silence is the new scream of freedom. You may be called insensitive, cold, distant, but what you're really becoming is free. Because being free means no longer living based on other people's emotions. It means not allowing yesterday's tears to determine tomorrow's path. It means understanding that empathy without limits becomes a chain, and that the only way to break free is to stop reacting. You are not born to be manipulated. You are born to be whole. And maybe, in the end, the most honest question you can ask yourself is, how many times did my emotions speak louder and I silence myself? You no longer need to be everyone's hero, not if that means becoming the villain in your own story. Empathy without discernment becomes a trap. Love without wisdom becomes a prison. Guilt planted in your heart becomes a leash. And without realizing it, you end up living a script written by someone who never truly saw you. Jung didn't preach emotional detachment. He preached lucidity, the conscious presence of self. He understood that one who rules their own heart does not surrender to emotional blackmail. They don't lose sleep trying to understand someone who never intended to be understood. They don't carry burdens disguised as cries for help that are actually attempts at control. You have the right to protect your peace as if it were your final frontier, because maybe it is. You have the right to say no without explanation, to close doors without a warning, to love without self-sacrifice. True power doesn't lie in feeling less. It lies in feeling with wisdom, in choosing what deserves your affection and what deserves only silence. And when you realize that you can look into the eyes of someone who used to manipulate you and feel no anger, no fear, no guilt, only a quiet, cold respect from someone who can no longer be touched, you'll understand. That is the beginning of freedom, the birth of the unshakable self, and the end of the old you, the one made of doubt, tears, and self-abandonment. You're not here to please others. You're here to be whole. And sometimes, being whole means feeling nothing, so that you can finally control everything. Let me tell you something I had never said out loud before. This script, this message, was not born from a brilliant idea. It was born from a scar. On a random night, phone in hand, a message appeared on the screen. Words that seemed like affection, but carried hidden venom. I read it, swallowed hard, and for a few seconds I thought of replying, apologizing, even though I had done nothing wrong, even though I knew it was just another emotional rope trying to tighten around my neck. And then I remembered all the times I gave in, all the times I kept quiet just to keep the peace. But it was never my peace. I bent out of fear of seeming cruel. I was kind until I lost myself. That night, there were no screams, no replies, just a quiet awakening. I wasn't wrong to protect my space. It wasn't selfishness. It was survival. It was finally maturity. And maybe you're here for the same reason, because at some point in your life, you felt too much, and you were used for that, because you learned to be silent so as not to lose. But in that silence, you lost yourself. This video is a hug for you, a whisper that reminds you it's okay to set boundaries. Your heart wasn't made to be a showcase for other people's wounds. Your empathy should not be a prison. Now, I want to offer you something that isn't for everyone, but it is for you. You, who made it this far, searching for deeper answers about who you are and where your life is going. I created something that goes beyond a book. I built a map for the soul, a guide that merges science, philosophy, and critical thought, a tool to help you break mental patterns, question your identity, and rebuild yourself from the root. This isn't an e-book of pretty quotes. It's a guide for those who can no longer stand living on autopilot. If you felt something here, it's because something inside you is waking up. And I thank you for letting that truth breathe with you, even just for a moment. Truly, thank you. Hey, you, the one who stayed until the end. Yes, I'm talking to you. If this video stirred something deep inside, don't leave in silence, okay? Like the video, or pretend you liked it. Just help the algorithm. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel, because you know how it goes. You watch, you cry, you reflect, and then you forget where you found it. Turn on the notification bell. Yes, the one you always ignore. It exists for a reason. And leave a comment below. I choose my peace. Let's see how many of us are finally ready to stop bleeding for those who only know how to press the wound. Now look at these two videos on the screen. One of them will show you a part of yourself you're still afraid to face. But that's okay. Click it. It'll be uncomfortable. But there are truths that only grow when we have the courage to face them in the dark. Go on. I'll see you at the next abyss, or the next awakening. Emotional attachment is one of the most powerful forces that govern our lives. It binds us to people, memories, and illusions that in many cases no longer serve us, or worse, they harm us. However, Carl Jung taught us that attachment is not merely an emotional bond, it is a projection of our psyche. We do not cling to people because we genuinely need them, but because they reflect unconscious aspects of ourselves. When we are unable to let go of someone who does not love us, what we are actually doing is rejecting a part of our own being. Jung discovered that the human psyche is composed of multiple facets, many of which remain in the shadow. The shadow is the repository of our repressed emotions, desires, and traumas. This shadow is precisely what makes us hold on to relationships that do not nurture us. Deep down, it is not the person themselves that keeps us bound. Rather, it is the part of ourselves that we project onto them. When we love someone who does not love us back, what we are truly doing is seeking external validation for something we have not yet found within ourselves. This is the trap of attachment. It deceives us into believing that our happiness depends on someone else, when in reality, what we seek is the integration of our own psyche. Therefore, letting go of someone who does not love us is not merely an act of detachment, it is a profound journey of self-discovery. It is not about forgetting the person or suppressing the pain, but about understanding why that connection was so significant for us. Jung stated that what we deny within ourselves appears externally as destiny. If we repeatedly find ourselves in relationships where we are not reciprocated, it is not a coincidence. It is a manifestation of something deeper, a lesson that our psyche is trying to teach us. Perhaps it stems from a childhood wound, a fear of loneliness, or a limiting belief about our own worth. Until we confront that shadow, we will continue attracting the same patterns repeatedly. This is where Jung's method for emotionally detaching from someone who does not love us becomes essential. The first step is to recognize the projection. Ask yourself, what part of myself am I seeing in this person? Maybe you are drawn to their confidence, independence, or passion for life. But instead of viewing these qualities as external, Jung invites you to integrate them within yourself. If you are attached to someone because you admire their self-assurance, perhaps it is time to cultivate your own confidence. If you cannot let go of a person because they make you feel special, ask yourself why you are unable to give that love to yourself. The second step is to confront the shadow. Jung emphasized that what we do not face within our psyche becomes our fate. If you always end up in relationships where you feel undervalued, there might be a part of you that believes you do not deserve more. Perhaps that belief originates from a childhood experience, a distant parent, or a past love that left deep wounds. But the past does not have to define you. True transformation occurs when you dare to look inward and heal those wounds instead of expecting someone else to do it for you. The third step is individuation. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming your true self beyond the expectations of others. It is a profound journey of self-discovery, requiring you to release anything that is not aligned with your essence. Part of this process involves letting go of people who do not reciprocate your love, not because you are unworthy of love, but because their path is simply different from yours. Trying to force a connection where there is no reciprocity is like attempting to fit a puzzle piece where it does not belong. Individuation means understanding that some people enter our lives only for a season, serving as teachers who reveal the lessons we need to learn. True detachment is not an act of coldness or indifference. Rather, it is an act of deep understanding. You come to realize that another person is not the source of your happiness, but a mirror reflecting something within you that requires integration. True love is not about dependency, it is about freedom. Letting go is not about losing, it is about creating space for something more aligned with your true self. At this point, many people fear the emptiness that comes with detachment. However, Jung taught that emptiness is not something to fear, but a sacred space where new things can take root and flourish. When you release a relationship that does not truly belong to you, what you are actually doing is opening yourself to the possibility of something greater. But the universe cannot bring you something new if you are still clinging to the old. It is in that very emptiness where true transformation occurs. This is where you rediscover yourself, not as someone seeking completion in another, but as someone who is already whole. And then, something magical happens. When you stop seeking love outside of yourself, you begin to radiate love from within. You no longer need external validation because you recognize your own worth. You no longer hold on to one-sided relationships because you value your peace more than the exhausting struggle to be seen. And in that moment, the right people begin to arrive. People who love you for who you truly are, not for what you provide or how you fit into their narrative. Emotional detachment does not mean ceasing to love. It means learning to love without fear, without expectations, and without chains. It is the realization that love is not possession, but freedom. When you understand this, you come to see that you never truly lost anything. You only released what was never truly yours to begin with. When Jung spoke about the transformation of the psyche, he was not referring to a superficial change, but to a deep metamorphosis. Letting go is not merely about ending a relationship. It is about being reborn as a new, more conscious, stronger, and more aligned version of yourself. There are no shortcuts in this process. Emotional detachment is an internal journey that requires courage, patience, and self-compassion. But in the end, the outcome is worth it. Because when you dare to release what does not belong to you, you discover something far more valuable, yourself. As you begin to let go, you realize that attachment was never truly love. It was a form of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing something that was never really yours. But Jung teaches us that fear is merely an illusion, a barrier that prevents us from accessing our true potential. And when you face that fear, when you choose to look beyond it, something shifts within you. You discover that solitude is not a punishment, but an opportunity to reconnect with yourself. You realize that the absence of another does not create a void, but rather a space for something better to enter your life. The problem with attachment is that it makes us dependent on something external for a sense of completeness. And when that external source disappears, we feel as if something is missing. But Jung reminds us that nothing external can give us what we truly seek. Everything you need, peace, love, security, happiness, is already within you. And when you truly understand this, when you don't just hear it, but deeply feel it, detachment stops being an effort and becomes a natural consequence. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean erasing memories or denying what you felt. It means accepting what was, learning the lesson, and moving forward. Carl Jung once said that the unconscious speaks to us through symbols and experiences, and that every relationship in our lives is a reflection of something much deeper within us. Every person who enters our life carries a meaning, a lesson, a mirror of our inner world. If someone arrives and then leaves, it is not a mistake, nor is it a loss. It is an experience designed to teach us something fundamental about ourselves. Perhaps it revealed to you what you truly desire, or maybe it highlighted the boundaries you are no longer willing to compromise. Maybe it forced you to confront a shadow aspect of yourself, one that you had been avoiding, but that needed integration in order for you to grow. But once the lesson has been learned, there is no reason to remain shackled to the past. The problem arises when we get trapped in pain, in nostalgia, in the endless loop of, what if I had done things differently? Jung reminds us that the past cannot be altered, it can only be understood. And once you truly understand it, you liberate yourself from it. There is no greater act of self-love than releasing what no longer resonates with you. Because in doing so, you are choosing yourself. You are declaring to the universe, I deserve something that nurtures my growth, something that brings me peace, something that does not require force or struggle. But the mind will resist. It will tell you that you cannot let go, that you need that person, that without them, nothing will be the same. But ask yourself, do you feel love, or is it dependence? Because love does not hurt. Love does not make you feel less. Love does not keep you trapped in an endless cycle of waiting for something that may never come. If it causes pain, it is because there is a wound that still needs healing. And that healing will not come from external sources. It can only emerge from within. When you finally decide to let go, you begin to see life from an entirely new perspective. You start to realize that people do not enter your life randomly. They arrive as reflections of something within you. And when a relationship ends, it is not the end. It is the beginning of a new cycle. But for a new cycle to truly begin, you must be willing to close the previous one. Not with resentment, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. Gratitude for what was, for what you learned, for the growth that it allowed you to experience. Because in the end, every single person who crosses your path leaves something behind, even if it is simply a lesson in what you no longer wish to repeat. True freedom is not about having no attachments at all, but rather about loving without possession, giving without expectation, being present without dependence. It is understanding that you can share your life with someone without making them the absolute center of your existence. It is realizing that love is not a chain, it is a state of being. And when you reach this level of understanding, when you stop searching outside for what has always been within you, you discover that the person you needed the most was always yourself. There are no shortcuts to detachment, no magic formulas to release the past. It is a process of deep transformation, of facing yourself, of questioning the beliefs you have carried your entire life. But once you cross that barrier, nothing is ever the same again. You stop suffering over what has left. and instead, you start trusting in what is yet to come. You stop searching for love in others and begin cultivating it within yourself. And in that moment, without effort, without force, the right people begin to enter your life. Not because you need them, but because you are finally in a place of completeness. Detachment is not a rejection of love. It is a higher form of experiencing it. It is love without fear, without demands, without unrealistic expectations. It is loving in a way that liberates you rather than binds you. It is understanding that no one belongs to you, and you do not belong to anyone. And when you finally comprehend this truth, you realize that you never truly lost anything. You were merely preparing yourself to receive something far greater. When you begin to let go, your mind will try to cling to memories, to unfulfilled promises, to moments when everything felt perfect. This is human nature, to hold on to what is familiar, even if what is familiar brings pain. But in the end, true liberation comes when you recognize that letting go is not losing. Letting go is making space for something new, something better, something that aligns with who you are becoming. And in that space, love, in its purest and most beautiful form, will always find you. Jung explained that the unconscious does not distinguish between what benefits us and what harms us. It simply seeks to repeat patterns. If, for years, you have believed that love means sacrifice, that happiness depends on someone else, that without that person, you are not enough, then your mind will do everything possible to keep you trapped in that belief. The process of emotional detachment is not just about letting go of a person. It is about unlearning all those limiting beliefs that have governed your life. It is not the absence of that person that hurts, but the story you built in your mind about what they meant to you. Perhaps you believed they were your only chance at love. Perhaps you thought that without that relationship, happiness would be impossible, or that you would never find someone like them again. But these are just illusions, created by a mind that has not yet discovered its true freedom. Attachment is not love. It is a form of emotional dependency that stems from the belief that something external will complete us. But Jung shows us that real love is not a pursuit. It is a state of being. You cannot find outside what you have not first cultivated within yourself. That is why, instead of focusing on what you lost, ask yourself, what part of me needs to heal? Because the pain does not come from the person who left, but from the part of your psyche that you have yet to integrate. That feeling of emptiness, that anxiety, that fear of being alone. None of that has to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. Letting go of someone who does not love you is not an act of loss. It is an act of self-love. It is telling yourself that you deserve more, that your energy is valuable, and that you do not need to beg for anyone's affection. This is not about ignoring the pain or pretending you don't care. It is about accepting it as part of the process. Jung said that the only way to transcend suffering is to go through it. And yes, at first, it hurts. It hurts because you are breaking a pattern, because your mind was used to depending on that person. But with each passing day, with every step you take in your own growth, you move closer to your true freedom. Something profound happens when you allow yourself to let go. It is as if suddenly the weight you have carried for so long begins to dissipate. Clarity arrives, answers appear, and you realize something you could not see before. Peace is not in holding on, it is in letting go. In that moment, you begin to live from your true essence, without fear, without burdens, without emotional chains tying you to the past. When you let go, you free yourself. You stop waiting for messages, analyzing every detail, wondering what you did wrong. You understand that love is not begged for, that respect is not demanded, that connection is not forced. And most importantly, you realize that the most important person in your life has always been you. This does not mean you will never love again, but the next time, you will do so from a different place. Not from need, but from wholeness. Not from fear of loss, but from the certainty that everything that comes and goes is part of your evolution. True detachment is an internal transformation. It is a journey in which you stop being who you were and become who you were always meant to be. And in that journey, every tear, every moment of solitude, every fading memory is a sign that you are moving forward. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that will lead you to real freedom. And when you reach the other side, when you look back and see how much you have grown, you will understand that you never really lost anything. You only found yourself. When you finally manage to let go, you realize that true love was never about holding on to someone else, but about the relationship you have with yourself. You learn that you do not need anyone's validation to feel complete, that happiness is not found in another person, but in the way you connect with your own essence. And it is in that moment that everything changes. You begin to see life from a new perspective, not from lack, but from abundance, not from the fear of losing, but from the confidence that everything meant for you will arrive at the right moment. Letting go of someone who does not love us is one of the hardest things we can do, but it is also one of the most liberating. It is not just about releasing a person, it is about reclaiming ourselves. It is about understanding that the love we seek externally can only be truly fulfilled when we find it within. The journey is not easy, but it is worth it, because in the end, the most important relationship we will ever have is the one we have with ourselves. According to Jung, true healing is not about simply letting go. It is about integration. It is not about erasing memories or suppressing emotions, but rather about accepting what has been lived, embracing it with gratitude, and moving forward with a renewed consciousness. Every person who crosses your path leaves a lesson. Every relationship that ends offers an opportunity for growth. Every painful moment is a signal, an awakening from within. When you understand this, anguish transforms into peace, attachment into freedom, and suffering into wisdom. This is the great paradox of love. It is only when you no longer seek it from a place of lack that it truly comes to you in its purest form. When you stop searching for someone to complete you, when you no longer depend on a relationship to feel worthy, that is when you begin to attract genuine connections, relationships built on resonance rather than necessity. These are the bonds where love is free, not a chain, where presence is a choice, not an obligation. And yet, this kind of love, this kind of connection, can only arise when you have learned to be at peace with yourself. It happens when you have healed the wounds of the past, and when you have allowed yourself to release what no longer belongs to you. This journey is not easy, but it is the only one truly worth taking, because in the end, life is not about clinging to what causes you pain, but about flowing with what helps you grow. It is not about living trapped in the nostalgia of the past, but about opening yourself to the infinite possibilities that the future holds. It is not about waiting for someone else to choose you, but about choosing yourself again and again, without hesitation, without fear, without guilt. If this message resonated with you, If at any moment you felt that these words were exactly what you needed to hear, I want to invite you to do something very simple, yet profoundly powerful. Share this video with someone who needs it just as much as you did. Maybe with that friend who can't seem to let go of a past relationship, who remains trapped in the pain of attachment, who still believes that their happiness depends on something external, or perhaps with someone who has yet to discover their own power, who hasn't realized the strength that already resides within them. Because when we share knowledge, when we expand these ideas, we help more people wake up, more souls find their path, and more lives undergo a true transformation. Think about it. How many people do you know who are struggling right now? How many are feeling lost, burdened by their past, unsure of how to move forward? Imagine what could happen if with just one message, one insight, one new perspective, they could break free from that invisible chain holding them back. You have the power to be the catalyst for that change. You have the ability to light the way for someone else. Leave me a comment down below and tell me, what part of this message impacted you the most? What did you take away from this? What are you willing to do today to begin your process of detachment, of true liberation? Your words might inspire others. Your reflections could be exactly what someone else needs to read at this very moment. You never know whose life you could touch with your thoughts, with your own journey of growth and healing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I warmly invite you to do so right now. Activate the notification bell so that you don't miss any content. Because together, we are creating something bigger than ourselves, a conscious community, a gathering of souls who seek to evolve, of minds that are ready to take the next step. The world needs more people who dare to live in authenticity, who are willing to let go of what no longer serves them, who choose freedom over fear. And today, you have the chance to be one of them. So do it. Don't wait any longer. Take that first step toward your transformation. Because the change you are looking for outside of yourself has always been within you. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You do not need to be fixed. You only need to remember who you truly are, free, whole, and capable of creating the life you deserve. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for listening, for sharing, for growing. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, true love begins when you learn to choose yourself first. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not wrap it up in pretty words or polite silence. There's something inside you, something raw and persistent, that you've been trying to silence for years. It's not loud, not dramatic. It's subtle. A dull hum in the background. An uncomfortable feeling that surfaces in the stillness, in those moments when everything seems fine on the outside. It's that strange, almost unnoticeable sensation that creeps in the second you stop moving, when distractions fade and all that's left is you. It's like your mind knows you're faking it, like your soul is sitting quietly in the corner, watching you with patient eyes, waiting for the exact moment to whisper, "You still don't get it, do you?" You've gone through life convinced that control is the key, that if you just plan enough, work hard enough, think ahead enough, if you speak carefully, move strategically, avoid mistakes at all costs, then everything will work out, that you'll finally feel safe, finally feel certain, finally feel free. But what happens when, despite all that effort, things still fall apart? When even your best-laid plans collapse? What if the problem has never been a lack of control, but rather your constant obsession with having it? Look around. Really look. Watch the people who try to keep everything in order, who clutch at the invisible strings of what they believe they control. Can you see the exhaustion in their eyes, the strain in their shoulders, the way they breathe like they're holding it in, waiting for something to go wrong? Anxiety doesn't come from chaos. It comes from our desperate attempts to avoid it. Fear doesn't emerge from the unknown. It grows from the constant need to predict and shape what's coming. And how many times have you felt that pressure in your chest, not because something was wrong, but because you were trying so hard to make everything go right? How often have you found yourself gasping for air under the weight of your own expectations, not because life was unbearable, but because you couldn't allow yourself to just let go? Maybe you haven't realized it yet, but you're trapped, aren't you? But it's not the world that's holding you prisoner. It's not your job, or your family, or your past. It's not even your future. You're trapped inside of you, in a version of yourself you've tried to bury, a part you've labeled dark, or wrong, or broken, a part you've tried to silence with spiritual jargon, or Instagram affirmations, or busy schedules. But that part of you, it hasn't left. It's still there, watching, waiting, smiling even. Because it knows something you've forgotten, that one day you'll have to stop running. And when that day comes, surrender won't mean defeat. It won't be the end. Surrender will feel like exhaling after years of holding your breath. It'll be like standing in the middle of a storm, letting your broken umbrella fall from your hands, and finally letting the rain soak you to your core. That's not weakness, that's freedom. That's the moment when healing begins, when truth steps in, when you stop pretending and start living. You don't know it yet, but your fight against life is exactly what's keeping you from experiencing it. Every time you try to force an answer, you block the one that was already making its way to you. Every time you insist on a direction, you build a dam in the flow of something much wiser than you. Do you see the irony? You've spent so long thinking control equals maturity. But maybe control is just fear in disguise, the clearest sign that you don't trust life at all. You can't control the ocean, but you can learn to swim. You can't stop the rain, but you can choose whether to dance in it or run for cover. And what I'm telling you now isn't just poetic fluff or spiritual fluff. It's the truth most people run from because it's inconvenient, because it forces you to accept that you are not and never were the center of the universe. You are not the master of time. You're not even the full author of your own story. You are here not to dominate, but to participate, to be present. What hurts is not life. What hurts is the resistance, that endless battle within, that pressure to always become, to prove, to perform, to belong. Have you ever wondered why the harder you try, the more difficult things seem to get? Why the more you chase something, the further it drifts away? It's because sometimes the act of chasing itself is the barrier. Life isn't punishing you. Life is responding to you. And when your energy is tense, controlling, fearful, what you receive in return is resistance, pressure, pushback. Life isn't something you own. It's something you live. And living isn't the same as managing or controlling every outcome. Living is daring to not know. It's making mistakes. It's freezing up. It's sitting in silence and realizing that you don't have it all figured out. And that's okay, because no one does, not really. And yet, only the brave ones are willing to admit it. Only the courageous ones are willing to let go of the wheel and discover that the river always knew where it was going. So the real question is, will you dare? Will you dare to stop fighting yourself? To stop pretending that everything is fine when you're falling apart in private? Will you stop wearing the mask of control while your true self screams in the dark room you refuse to open? Because that's the cruelest trick of all, to wear confidence like armor while your shadow breaks behind the scenes, desperate to be seen. But if you truly dare to sit with yourself, without distraction, without judgment, without numbing, you'll discover something no one ever taught you. That peace doesn't come when everything is perfect. Peace arrives when you finally accept that perfection was never required. It comes when you no longer need your life to look a certain way. When you realize that maybe, just maybe, your life doesn't fit yet because you've been trying to build it with pieces that were never yours. You're building your life using someone else's maps, following paths that were never meant for your feet, obeying directions you don't fully understand, echoing words that don't belong to your voice. And yet, you keep moving forward, guided more by fear than clarity. You try to make sense of a world that seems chaotic, and you believe the chaos is out there, around you. But the truth is far more confronting. The real chaos is within. It lives in the cracks of your suppressed emotions, in the silence after a forced smile, in the tension between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be. And still, you chase after order, some perfect balance, a formula that will finally make everything make sense. But here's the secret. Order will never arrive while you're pretending there's no disorder. Peace will never come as long as you're busy performing calmness. And healing won't happen if you keep denying the wound. But there is a way out. Not a quick fix, not a life hack, not a 5-step plan or a morning routine. It's not a deep breath or a clever mantra. It's a decision, a real, terrifying, soul-shaking decision. Not to surrender to life, but to surrender into life. To let it hold you. To stop fighting, resisting, pretending. To allow yourself to be touched by life in all its rawness, without filters, without masks, without expectations. And that's where real freedom begins. Not the freedom that looks good in a social media post. Not the curated version of healing. Number the kind of freedom that strips you naked of everything you thought you were, until you're standing there, unsure, trembling, real. And right when you think you've figured something out, when you feel like you've reached some clarity, life throws another truth in your path, one that's even harder to accept. That truth is this: you have no idea who you are, because what you think you are, this identity you've worn like armor, is just a carefully constructed illusion. It was built with other people's opinions, shaped by the expectations you never agreed to, patched together with old pain, and decorated with the masks you've worn to protect yourself. And here comes the hardest part to admit. The more you try to hold on to that false self, the more you suffer. Deep down, you know it's not real. You feel it in the quiet moments, when no one's watching, when the noise fades. You can sense that underneath all the roles, all the perfection, all the control, there's something else, something untamed, something wild, raw, honest, and yes, deeply vulnerable. And that scares you more than anything, because if you let go of who you think you are, then who's left? Who are you when you're not performing? Who are you when you stop trying to be enough? That's when things get real, because the true enemy isn't life. It never was. Life isn't against you. Life doesn't need you to be perfect. The real enemy is the version of yourself that you force yourself to maintain. The version you've been selling to others, and worse, to yourself. The image of the one who's always strong, always capable, always unbreakable. the one who always keeps it together. But behind that image, there's a truth you've been avoiding. You are not that character. You never were. And continuing to act like you are is slowly destroying you. Not with fire, not with explosions, but with quiet emptiness, with a numbness that creeps in, day by day, an emptiness that no amount of achievements, success, or applause has ever managed to fill. Have you noticed? You've accomplished things you once dreamed of. You've reached milestones you once prayed for. And still, something's missing. You still feel lost. Why? Because you're trying to build a life for someone who doesn't really exist. And here lies the cruelest paradox. The more you try to control everything to protect that identity, the further you drift from your true self. You stop feeling. You stop exploring. You stop living. You become so consumed with keeping that ideal self above water, you don't even realize that version of you isn't alive. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't feel. It doesn't dream. It just survives. And that's the true cost of control. Disconnection. Disconnection from life, from love, from your own soul. Because control demands you live in your head. It asks you to think more than you feel, to analyze everything, every step, every word, every interaction. You become a strategist of your own life, constantly calculating, constantly planning, and in the process, you forget how to live it. But there's something deeper, something darker. The reason you can't let go of control isn't just fear. It's guilt. Yes, guilt. Somewhere inside you, there's a part that truly believes you don't deserve to flow. That ease is something to be earned, not something you're worthy of. That if you're not constantly fighting, you're failing. That if you're not suffering, you're not growing. So you keep pushing. You keep performing. You keep tightening your grip, even when your soul is begging you to let go. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to listen to that voice. Not the loud one that demands perfection, the quiet one, the one that whispers in moments of stillness, the one that remembers what it feels like to just be without having to prove anything to anyone, not even yourself. That voice knows something true. You were never meant to live this guarded, this disconnected, this numb. You were born to feel deeply, to love freely, to be wildly human, messy, imperfect, alive. And somewhere under all the roles, beneath the guilt and the noise and the fear, that you still exists. And she's not asking for control. She's asking to be seen. You were conditioned to believe that life is supposed to hurt, that peace is suspicious, that if you're calm, something must be wrong. And the most painful part, you believed it. You bought into the lie that you only have value when you're struggling, that your worth depends on how much pain you can endure while still pushing forward. You learned to associate strength with suffering, to equate exhaustion with success, to see stillness as laziness. You were told that peace is for the weak, that embracing the present is careless, that not fighting means giving up. But that's not true. You've confused surrender with defeat. You've mistaken flow for passivity. You've labeled authenticity as chaos. And none of that is your fault. You were trained meticulously, repeatedly, to believe those things. Since you were little, they taught you to hide your shadow, to push down your anger, to mask your sadness. They told you that showing emotion made you fragile, that feeling deeply was dangerous, risky, something to avoid. So, you learned to control, to monitor every reaction, to filter every thought, to second-guess every decision. You even learned to control your breathing, your posture, your presence, just to avoid being too much, too real, too you. But you weren't born to be a machine. You didn't come here to live in survival mode, to merely exist inside a script written by fear. You came to feel, to expand, to stumble and fall and get back up without shame. You came to love with your whole heart. You came to live, not to endure. But to truly live, you first have to let go of who you think you are. And I know that's terrifying. Shedding the controlled image you've carefully maintained feels like a kind of death. And in many ways, it is. But it's the death of illusion, not of you. It's the necessary death of everything false so that something real can finally breathe. Because only when the character dies can the person be born. Here's something no one has told you in simple words. You cannot find peace by trying to control everything. Peace doesn't come from perfect plans or constant effort. Peace isn't something you build, it's something you allow. It shows up the moment you stop demanding life to be different, and instead choose to witness it exactly as it is. And in that moment of radical acceptance, everything begins to shift. Not in an instant, not like a miracle out of nowhere, but slowly, gently, meaningfully. Because when you stop fighting, the conflict loses its purpose. You're no longer at war with what you feel. You're no longer trying to force things that aren't ready. You're no longer resisting what's already happening. You're simply being. And being in a world that constantly tells you to run is the most revolutionary act of all. But to be present, you have to stop running. And you've been running your whole life. You run with your mind, jumping from thought to thought, clinging to outcomes. You run with your emotions, pushing them down before they can speak. You even run in stillness, pretending to be calm, while your soul is still sprinting. You run in the form of expectations, endless plans, judgments, and busy distractions, all to avoid a terrifying truth: the emptiness. I know you're afraid of that emptiness. We all are. It feels like a black hole, like a silence too loud to bear. But what you don't realize is that this void you keep avoiding isn't your enemy, it's your origin. That emptiness isn't broken. It's not a hole to be filled. It's a space to be inhabited. It's the gateway to your truth. So let me ask you something, and really take a moment before you answer. What would happen if just for today you stopped running? What would happen if you stopped trying to be right, stopped trying to have all the answers, stopped clinging to the next plan, the next distraction, the next version of who you're supposed to be? What if, for once, you simply paused? Not to give up, but to breathe, to feel, to witness yourself without the armor, without judgment, without filters. Could you do it? Could you sit in the silence long enough to hear your own voice again? Because that silence, that stillness you feared for so long, isn't empty. It's not a punishment. It's where your freedom lives. And no, it won't feel comfortable. It's going to hurt. Because when the running stops, the first thing you'll meet is everything you tried to leave behind. Your fears, your contradictions, your suppressed pain, your unmet needs, your forgotten self. But if you dare to stay, if you choose not to escape, you'll uncover something that no one taught you to expect. Your darkness is not your curse. It's not your weakness. It's your compass. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's your guide. And all the control you thought you needed. That was never safety. It was separation. A wall between you and the very life you came to live. And when that wall crumbles, when that illusion dissolves, something unimaginably powerful is revealed. You. Not the polished, edited version of you. Not the one who performs or hides or tries to be acceptable. Just you. Without masks, without roles, without fear. And in that raw, unfiltered presence, life finally begins. True life, not a performance, not a survival game, real, breathing, unpredictable life. And just when you think you've reached the bottom, that you've hit the deepest part of your soul, you realize there's more. Because the silence you feared, it wasn't the end. It was the doorway. It was the threshold to everything real. The true journey begins the moment there's nothing left to prove. When you no longer feel the need to justify your existence. When you can simply exist. No explanations, no defenses, no escape. That's when you finally come home to yourself. Can you even imagine it? Truly, try to picture this for a moment. A life where you don't have to constantly justify yourself, where you can breathe without questioning whether you're doing it right, where every decision doesn't feel like a test you might fail. Not because you've become flawless, no, not at all, but because for the first time, you've made peace with not being perfect. And that changes everything. That quiet acceptance, that deeply personal truth, births something no one else can ever give you. It's not taught, it's not inherited, it's not granted, it's claimed. That's where real sovereignty is born. In the precise moment, you realize you no longer need anyone's permission to be who you are. You no longer chase validation, not because it lost its meaning, but because you've touched something much deeper, something unshakable, something real, authenticity. And let's be honest, authenticity doesn't sparkle. It doesn't try to be liked. It's not curated for likes or shaped to fit expectations. It's not neat. It's not easy. It can be raw, messy, uncomfortable. Sometimes it's even ugly. But it's real. It's yours. It's the part of you that doesn't dress itself up for approval. The part that doesn't play nice just to be accepted. It's the voice that grows stronger the moment you decide to stop performing and start living. Because you can only find your truth when you finally get tired. Tired of faking. Tired of pleasing. Tired of shrinking yourself to fit into boxes you never chose. And in that fatigue, something powerful happens. You begin to unmask. You begin to come home to yourself. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That's when a real human being is born. Not the one who copies spiritual quotes or fills their feed with empty inspiration. No, I'm talking about the one who's been shattered more times than they can count, and somehow keeps rising. The one who has danced on the edge of despair, who has walked right up to the abyss and stared down their fears, not because they're fearless, but because they know there is no greater fall than abandoning yourself. And do you know why this changes everything? Because from that place, that raw, unedited, courageous place, you no longer need to control everything. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes. You begin to trust, not in some magical future, not in blind hope, but in yourself. You start believing in your own strength, in your own resilience. You start realizing you have the right to be here, as you are, without apologies. You begin to understand that you don't need to have all the answers to move forward. Because sometimes, not knowing is the highest form of maturity. If you can stand still, in the middle of uncertainty, if you can be fully present without needing clarity, then truly, there's nothing left to fear. And when that clicks into place, your entire way of seeing the world shifts. You don't become louder. You become deeper, more grounded, more still. People around you notice. Something about you has changed, but they can't put their finger on it. And it's simple. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You've stopped negotiating your worth. And that, right there, is magnetic. Not because you're demanding attention, but because you can finally give it without fear, without armor. Because now you can see without flinching. You can stay without running. You can be without pretending. And that kind of presence, that quiet, rooted, powerful presence, radiates. It speaks before you open your mouth. It moves everything without a single word. The energy of someone who has come home to themselves is impossible to ignore. And now look at you. You're here. You've made it this far. You've stayed with this message until the end. And that says so much about you. That tells me, and more importantly tells you, that there's a part of you that's done surviving. A part of you that no longer wants to live on autopilot. A part of you that's ready, truly ready, to stop controlling everything and finally start living. Not as a poetic idea, not as something pretty to post, but as a quiet revolution, a conscious surrender, a sacred acceptance. Because surrender isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning. It's the part no one else can write for you. It's the chapter only you can live. And so, if something stirred in you during this video, a tightness in your chest, a flicker of recognition, a whisper in the back of your mind, honor it. Don't ignore it. Write it down. Not for me, for you. Or, if you feel called to share it, leave a comment below with just one sentence. I dare to let go. That's all. No need to explain. Just that, I dare to let go. If this video stirred something in you, subscribe, but not out of habit. Do it only if you want to keep exploring this version of yourself that doesn't need control to feel alive. Turn on the bell if you want these messages to find you when you need them the most. And if you know someone who's stuck inside their own invisible cage, send this to them. Don't explain anything, just send it. Sometimes a single sentence at the exact right time can crack open a wall that once felt eternal. And now, this is goodbye, but not in the usual way, not with a farewell, but with a silence that belongs to you. Because now, it's your turn. The video ends, but what opens now is not an ending. It's a portal. See you soon.